One of the points that whenever I go out and speak to local youth sports organizations, what I will say is like, listen, any youth sports organization in America should be able to sell $10,000 of sponsorships on a local level. Welcome to Sponsor Bowl, a podcast that brings together sports organizers and brand leaders to talk about the business of grassroots sports. I'm Garrett Shea, and I've spent the past 20 years in the youth sports industry, where I've built nationally televised sporting events and corporate sponsorship programs. I created this podcast to bring in experts from the sports industry and have them share what they do in the space and how they do it. My guest today is going to bring you game-changing insight on sports marketing, share his unique perspective on what a brand marketer is looking for in youth sports organizations, and what brands are doing to maximize their partnerships. He led Dick's Sporting Goods National Community Marketing for 20 plus years. Let's welcome Dave Natale. All right. Hey, Dave, it is great to have you on the podcast. I've been looking forward to diving in, talking with you about community marketing, your career with Dick's Sporting Goods, what you're doing now as an independent sports consultant, and I'm really excited to have you on today.
Thanks, Garrett. It's great to be here. Great to see you again. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think we first met when you were head of community marketing for Dick's Sporting Goods, and it was years and years ago. I'd love to just kind of hear a little, and obviously Dick's, and from my perspective, Dick's has done such a great job building the brand and building their relationships with community organizations across the United States, and then coupled with just that the strategy and what they were looking for in community partners and how they were building those. So I'd love to just, I'd love to just really turn it over to you and have you kind of talk us through, some of your experience at Dick's and what you feel comfortable talking about community marketing.
Absolutely. Thanks again for the opportunity. So, yeah, we as we've discussed, I was fortunate to have a long tenure at Dick's. I started at the original store in upstate New York, actually, and during my time there, worked in a number of capacities in operations, merchandising, e-commerce, and then as what we're here to talk about today was sports and community marketing and how we elevate that for the business. And as I think back about my time growing from 6 to over 900 stores, I think back. I remember a time working in the stores where we would put sports away for the year, right? I remember packing up baseball in fall and putting it in the back room on the shelves, not to be seen until February. And you wouldn't think of that today, right? Whether it's baseball, soccer, any sport, sports as an industry is become so robust, so sophisticated, and so prevalent in every part of our lives. And so that was really kind of the launch of our community marketing program. We saw as sports became more important to society and to our customers, we saw it as a great way to connect with those customers. And that was really focused on setting up grassroots relationships with youth sports leagues across all sports. And really, as we expanded our footprint across the nation, that became a key way in which we were able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it, right? As the rising tide lifts all boats, and that's what year-round sports has done for an organization like Dick's Sporting Goods. It really has created, a marketplace for them, for any parent to be able to go in and get any sports equipment at any point of the year, which is tremendous for Dick's, for this, for the parent. I'm a parent of 3, and my kids are always, they play every sport under the sun. So I'm in at Dick's all the time. Maybe talk about a little bit, especially from a Dick's perspective, because I always think this is so interesting from a brand perspective. I'm on the sales side, so I'm always selling to brands. I'm always trying to build what is that value proposition from a grassroots sports marketing standpoint for the brand. What is Dick's, as Dick's went in and you went in from a national level? Obviously, you had a lot of staff on a local level. What were you looking for in community partnerships?
Yeah, to me, one of the pillars of community marketing is building trust and loyalty with your customers. And yes, you want their business in some capacity, right? That's an important part of it. But if it's just transactional, that doesn't have the meaning that you're looking for. Community marketing is very much engaged in those communities in building, meaningful, authentic relationships. And that means that you have to get in and really understand the needs of your customer base there. Each of those sports, you need to understand the different types of products, the different challenges, what their aspirations are, all of those different anomalies around sports. You really have to get in and understand those so that you can develop your offering to meet those needs. As you look at youth sports organizations, there's commonalities in what people need. It's funding, it's field maintenance, it's equipment and education and things of that nature. But not every organization needs all of those. And so as we started to create those relationships, which grew to over 5,000 leagues across the country, it's really important to get in and make those relationships and develop them and understand what those needs are. This organization may have great funding, but they don't have volunteers, or this organization doesn't need to worry about field maintenance because the township provides that. And so they're more focused on how they can develop the players. And so as we developed an offering, it wasn't just about sponsorships, because that's what a lot of people want, right? They want the finances, the money to help grow the organization. um, and obviously dollars are limited in some capacity, but we were committed to that. But it was also, how do we differentiate ourselves, right? We wanted, okay, if we provide $1,000 sponsorship to a league, how is that any different than if a car dealer does it, or a pizza shop? Anyone can really do that if they have the resources available. And so we set out to really, like I said, understand those needs and provide unique ways we could do that. And so not only did we have the cash sponsorships, but we had equipment donations that we provided. We spent a fair amount of time really honing in on events and experiences. And that was, how can we elevate that experience for people to want to participate more, right? People fall out of sports because it's not fun. They feel a little disconnected. They lack that confidence. So we started to develop camps and clinics that both players could attend and have fun learning the game, learning from coaches that we were there, providing resources with some of our partnerships. And then the other part of that was for coaches themselves. What tools and resources can we provide those coaches so they're armed to go out there and run effective and meaningful practices? As you know, there's so many parent volunteers doing, working as coaches today. Many of them are well intentioned, but we wanted to find ways that we could help elevate that for them and make it a better experience.
Well, I mean, and that makes perfect sense. And the reason why you're a great marketer is you do work to understand, hey, how do I build meaningful relationships, authentic relationships? And that's it just kind of light bulb goes off, and it's like that's why Dick's had so much success. It wasn't, hey, just put my banner up in the outfield and send an email out to your database. It was, hey, what's your pain point? How do we help your parents, or how do we help your coaches? And one program that jumps to mind, because I remember, I don't know, 15 years ago when at the time one of your competitors, Sports Authority, we had done a deal with them to do like to send out all of these discount coupons, and they were adamant. They were like, man, we don't want to email, we want to get these coupons in the hands of kids, or really of parents, right? um, and so, like, we literally, I think, we mailed out to 20,000 teams and coaches these, or really Sports Authority did these hard coupons, and had the coach hand them out, and they were like 15% off. And when they came back and shared their ROI, it was mind blowing, because like we had always looked at digital, and this very hand to hand paper coupon, right? I mean it was millions of dollars of sales for them. And I know, I don't just through working with Dix, that Dix has employed that a similar kind of program. Maybe talk to us little bit about, like, how did that come about? Did was that a response that Dick's created to like somebody like Sports Authority? Was Dick's already doing it? Maybe talk a little bit about like those kind of couponing kind of drive to retail programs.
Absolutely. So that was one of the fundamental, objectives for us was to put offers in hand to drive people into stores. And initially, that was done with paper coupons. That was basically a packet that would be, kitted and give it to the organization, and each coach would receive a packet and would be able to distribute to its team. And it was an effective measure at the time. Now things have evolved, right? Technology's introduced some new efficiencies in that, where you can get it in hand, in the hands of the parents directly and expedite that. Yeah, that was an enormous growth program for us, and we were able to kind of prove that ROI on the program and continue to build out on it. That became a really important focus for us. But as time went on, as we were doing those, that was, you just kind of watch the transactions come in, right? Over time, you look at reporting and see coupon numbers and things related to that. We wanted to try a different model, and it kind of ties back into what we talked about with events and experiences. But rather than just having, hey, here's your coupon, come in at your leisure, we started to create events in store for leagues. So on this day at this store, it's this youth league's their shop day, their special day leading up to the season. And there were a bunch of efficiencies for this. One, it sort of galvanized the crew to all come in. Everyone was coming in at one day, on one day for that. But it allowed us to be more prepared for what was going to come on. You're talking 400 or 500 families coming into the store on an event weekend. And so we were staffed properly for that. We were able to work with the merchandising teams and replenishment teams to make sure that we had the products that appealed to them and in stock. And if there were certain items unique to this league, we could be prepared for that too. If they needed purple belts or whatever it may be, right? We could plan for that accordingly. So it allowed us to create a more efficient experience for people. But going through that, I also saw, as you go to those events, it created that sense of community for people, and I think it added to the experience and really helped drive sales. So as I went to a number of these events, both as as an employee of Dick's, but also as a parent myself, and kind of work them just to welcome people in and things of that nature. You'd see a lot of people. It was the first time they were seeing each other all winter long, right? This is for baseball, right? They've been cooped up all winter, and so it's nice to see our friends and neighbors and things of that nature. And as people are shopping, you might have a T-baller there and they're shopping for the first time, but the neighbor down the street's there and has a kid who's in coach pitch, and they can provide some guidance to them and stuff. So again, it helps feed that confidence and that sense of community, to really make it the best possible experience. We talked about, I was overseeing this division at Dick's. Fortunate for me, about the same time, my kids entered youth sports, both youth basketball, flag football for a little bit, but youth baseball. And as he was in T-ball, I said, "Yeah, I'll volunteer to be a assistant coach for T-ball." And then 2 weeks later, I was one of the core board members of the organization. It's a lot of nights and weekends working on that, in addition to my normal job. But I really saw tremendous value in it, because I was able to see firsthand what those league admins, coaches, what their pain points are, what's on their wish list, right? How can what are they dealing with, and how can we provide services more effectively for them? So I was really fortunate that the timing of that.
Sure. And did for those shop events, because I'm very familiar with the shop events and love and to your point, like you guys evolved that strategy of, hey, just come in and use this coupon, to, hey, the whole league can come in and shop together on a weekend and get this discount. And to your point, like their special items and equipment. Did you guys create additional, like, marketing elements that you found that were maybe like increase the average purchase of a parent of a family via shop events?
Yeah, it's a great question, Garrett. So yes, with that, we created some collateral and whatnot that was specific to that organization. In many cases, we try and decorate the front of the store related to that league. We might put up a little sign, welcome sign, some colors related to the league that were there. And then, as I mentioned, if we get some intelligence from that league that, hey, they require this pull-up pant with this piping or whatever it may be. We were able to understand that ahead of time, and in many cases, we just roll out racks and things, and excess inventory to prepare for that. So it was really focused on, again, understanding their needs and then trying to address it at the store level.
Sure, sure. And I it kind of gets me thinking. Our friends at Squad Locker, I used to always, and they're the great custom, like custom team stores, and they're purely online. But one of the things that they would always kind of tout to us was, hey, if you can get a mandatory item. So basically every kid has to buy, the jersey and the shorts. One, that's gonna drive 100% of conversion from that league into the squad locker. But then they see all of the other items like the hoodie and the other kind of pieces, so that average purchase by each family goes way up. And so like those mandatory items, and I think that's where it's like the evolution of how does a parent purchase their stuff for the upcoming season is always very fascinating to me, because you look at soccer, and I think soccer does the best job out of everybody when it comes to like, hey, it's time for my kid to buy his, soccer jersey and his kit, right? And it's okay, I got to go into the system and I got to buy the jersey and I got to buy the shorts, and oh, by the way, I can buy 4 pairs of socks and I can buy cleats. And so to me, it's like, man, that is such a smart way to do things. And I feel like soccer is one of the few sports that's figured it out. I'm assuming other sports are kind of on their way, but and I'll kind of circle back to Dick's. I know that at some point Dick's had I believe acquired. I don't know if they acquired Blue Sombrero, or they had built it internally. But that you started to see this kind of your community marketing, community relationships, and then kind of the evolution of youth sports, which is sports tech and data, starting to mesh together. I mean, maybe talk a little bit about, because I'm assuming that you were at Dick's Sporting Goods when that kind of transition, or that or I don't know if it was acquisition.
Acquisition. Yeah, acquisition. Yeah, we had 3 tech companies that we acquired. I was there for that, yeah. And
Yeah,
you're right, it was really about the evolution of the sophistication of youth sports. You talk about being able to get the entirety of your uniform and fan wear and things. When you and I were little, I think maybe you kept your baseball hat, but the jersey went back. It was on loan for the season. And now that sophistication of uniforms, we don't just have one uniform or 2 or 3 or an alternate jersey. There's warm ups. There's so much involved in that. And so, yeah, at the time we acquired Sports Tech, and that was Blue Sombrero, which is league websites, registration services, communication tools, which has really, I mean, immensely helped youth sports. It's helped the administrators be able to run their leagues more effectively instead of processing 300 to 400, paper registrations. It's increased communication instead of phone trees. You could click on an app and 2 seconds inform people of changes and things of that nature. So that's really helped with that. But yeah, we saw the opportunity. One, you get that in front of, is a more effective way to get in front of people, to push out messaging, offers. We talked about shop days, and to really understand the universe of youth sports, which continues to grow.
yeah. And what always kind of amazed me, was that Dick's never really got into, at least from my purview, got into uniforms. It was always kind of the equipment pieces around, like, that are required to play the sport, not necessarily the uniform side of it. Am I right?
Absolutely. We dabbled in it for a short time and really saw the benefit, really focusing on equipment, training and things that need equipment, more of the equipment, less on the uniform side. Some opportunity, through some relationships around fanware, which continues to grow. Not only did the kids want that, but it's important for the parents and siblings to, be proud of your organization and walk around feeling proud about your gear. So that's been an opportunity as well.
Yeah, and as I kind of look at the space and see the evolution of the recreation, or I shouldn't even say recreation, of the youth sports uniform is becoming more like more of the professional leagues, right? There's the NFL flag, and now there's MLS Go, and all of these, it's now kids have the chance to wear their, whatever the sport is, their or professional teams, because you don't necessarily get to wear your favorite team, but you get to wear a professional team. And I've, and you see the fanatics of the world that are just, doing a great job with, kind of pro team merchandise. And clearly, Dick's is now getting into it. And I know this is more like looking forward, but, from a community marketing standpoint, what do you see as the kind of the evolution, if you would, of youth sports, and what's happening between the meshing of pro and youth brand? I would almost just say brands, right? Yeah,
It's a delicate balance, if you ask me. It's great to have all of these resources, and we started to do some, and the league that I was involved with, we started to do some, Fourth of July hats and other things that kind of tie into the themes of what you see at the pro level. And it's really exciting for the leagues to feel like that's available to them for their league as well. It's something, again, to be proud of. But to me, it's a delicate balance of, you always want something to look forward to, right? And you kind of graduate into some things. So it's a balance of that. But yeah, youth sports has evolved. It's more sophisticated from a technology perspective, from a training perspective, repetitions. And so it's a balance of that, because you hear so much conversation about encouraging kids to play multiple sports, and that creates a lot of conflict with that. So to me, it's a delicate balance, but it should really be focused on how do we provide that best possible experience, whether that's for kids playing at a travel organization that play 40, 50 games a year, to the rec-based player that wants to go out and be there with his friends in the community, head to the snack shop after the game, and just enjoy that experience of being a kid.
yeah. No. And so, like, and kind of circling back to your community marketing experience, because I know we have a lot of sports organizers tune into the show. And so, like, they're looking at, and whether it's Dick's or whether it's somebody else, right? What, like, as a marketer, what do you look for in when you partner, when you because there's a lot of I mean, I think we talked about it in depth, about just a multitude of different sports, how accessible sports are. And there are a ton of different leagues. And so there's got to be a ton of different options for a brand who's looking to who's looking to reach the community, reach the parents and the athletes. What, if you put your kind of, and I'll almost call it your buy hat on, your buyer's hat on, what are you looking for from like a local youth sports league partnership standpoint?
Yeah. So as a marketer with the organization, what's going to be attractive in a relationship with that league? You mean? Is that,
Yes,
I think, what you're saying?
correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So to me, it's one. Do they align with our objectives and our business opportunity? Is this a sport that is relevant to our business? And there's product sales opportunities and things of that nature that we can help grow here. That's an important piece. But I think one of the critical pieces is the sophistication of the league. Can they execute on that? Do they have meaningful ways to contribute with their database, or excuse me, to communicate with their database? And are they receptive to being being engaged with that? And then in many instances, you look to see, are there opportunities to be on site, whether there's large tournaments, opening day events for rec organizations. Those can be attractive ways for some brands to be, sort of boots on the ground, for lack of a better term, and go out and distribute products, offers, and really interact with the brand from that perspective as well. So it's that sophistication. Can they help us achieve our goals of communicating with their audience effectively? And then what opportunities exist throughout the year to actually connect with them?
And do you prefer, like, so if I'm running, and I know it's you know the devil's in the details, but let's say I'm running a youth sports organization, and I come to you with a kind of a very custom strategic pitch, compared to, I come to you with, hey, here's kind of all of the here's all my assets that I have. I'd love to talk with you and kind of you pick and choose. So and I'm sure you've had a number of different groups approach you, but like, what is your advice for that local youth sports organization who's trying to sell to a brand, whether it's a big national brand like Dick's or a kind of smaller local brand?
Yeah. So it's a great question, and I've been on both sides of that as the buyer, as you said, on the Dick side, and then helping support some other youth organizations to help look at sponsorships and partnerships and things related to that. I think it's important to show your flexibility. So if I'm going out to market or to sell my league to potential partners, to brands and things related to that, it's important to show your flexibility. That hey, here's kind of the things that we're involved with, and you know the types of things that we could do. But I think it's very important to then close up on the back end and provide some recommendations for here's what we're thinking specifically for you. We should leave that open ended, that it kind of leaves them an out. They don't really, it's hard for them. They may not see it very clearly, uh, might just kind of get disengaged and whatnot. But if you say, here's the breadth of what we do, we could be flexible. If, I want to hear from you what your objectives are and how we can help appeal to them. But if I can go to them and say, I envision your brand connecting with us in this capacity, and this is how we can help drive people to your store or buy online, then that will capture their attention more and more likely lead to a partnership.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. I mean, providing a brand with something to react to, I think is so important. It's to your point, like you show me this big, huge menu of all these options, and it's like as a brand, I'm sitting there thinking, man, what like you almost have too many options, and you're trying to figure, and then you have to almost like create your own package, and so like from a local level, because one of the points that whenever I go out and speak to local youth sports organizations, what I will say is like, listen, any youth sports organization in America should be able to sell $10,000 of sponsorships on a local level, and you can do it by bringing on four $2,500 partners. You can do it by bringing on 10 $1,000 partners. You just got to figure out your strategy. You got to figure out your value proposition to those local brands. And then you actually got to take it out. To your point, you got to package it, take it out to them. And not everybody's going to say yes, but I'll tell you what, you take it out to 50 brands. And from a local standpoint, you're going to get a lot of yeses.
Absolutely, as people have that commitment to the local community. Important point about that. I mentioned I ran my youth baseball organization. One of my responsibilities there was sponsorships, and so I was responsible for going out and working on partnerships throughout the year. And most of that is field banners, right? If you look at youth sports, that's a huge component. Field banners and jersey logos, or name on the jersey. But I think it's important to stop and look. Are there other things that we could do here that would be meaningful to in some capacity? Do we have a tournament where they could be on site? Do we have an event where we need pizza for, and we could, be purchasing from that organization? So you have to, as an independent youth sports organization, you have to ask yourself: am I asking for a donation or a sponsorship? That's a clear delineation between the two, and then find the way to, because that sponsorship is really about a reciprocating value. For they're providing us with resources, whatever that may be, and we're providing them with some value as well. And I think it's important to lean towards that as opposed to just asking for the donation. You'll get some of those, right? There's someone who just that I played there 30 years ago, and I'm going to continue to support the you'll have some of those, but it's important to provide value on both sides.
Great point, because I mean that's such a important point. Donation versus sponsorship. What I always and whether it's right or wrong, because I don't know how many brands would do this, but if I'm a brand and I'm pitched a sponsorship and it's like, hey, pay me $2,500 and I'll send out 3 emails and I'll put your logo on the website and I'll put your logo on the t-shirt. Well, if that organization doesn't send out the 3 emails and doesn't put my logo on the t-shirt, at some point that brand's going to say, hey, I just wrote you a check for $2,500. To your point, it wasn't a donation. Hey, either deliver on this or at some point, give me a refund. right? And that's what I think people need to, especially in the youth sports world, need to realize is that you've got to create programs and sponsorship packages that you can deliver. It can't just be, hey, I'm just going to dream something up and sell it, and then never deliver. Because and it's also as we know in this business, it's you want to build sponsorships, partnerships that are 5, 10, 15 years, because you're going to get a lot, you're going to get a lot more financial stability and revenue through that 15-year relationship than you are if you do a 1 year $2,500 deal and then you
Absolutely.
work it back. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. You want to avoid that kind of one and done scenario. That's not good for anyone involved.
Yeah. So, so Dave, why don't you share us a little bit about kind of what you're currently working on? I know you're independent. Doing a lot of independent consulting, but maybe share a little bit about what you're currently working on.
Yeah, primarily still in the youth sports space. I've spent some time working with sports tech organizations, on how they build out the business and tap into this customer base we talked in the youth sports organizations. And then I'm working with a youth hockey organizations that titled 200 by 85. It's dimensions of the rink. Um, but it's a really premier youth sports, or excuse me, youth hockey organization that provides tournaments, development events, showcases, really across the entire country. It's obviously focused more in, kind of the cold weather states, but that footprint's expanding across the country. But one of the things I've really been impressed on is the level of experience they provide people. Their tournaments are well organized, they have great communication, equal play for people involved. And those experiences and development events and showcase events are about providing opportunities for exposure um, for kids, for collegiate play, potentially professional play, and things of that nature. And they've expanded, acquired a organization, Premier Ice Prospects, which is solely dedicated to the girls' side of the game. And they've been really laser focused since the start of the pandemic on the expansion of that program and providing those opportunities. It's great to see that pay off. And it's interesting as you look at partnerships with them. I think one of the challenges they have is they're going into rinks around the country that they don't have ownership of. And so some of those traditional sponsorship elements you may see at a local baseball field or soccer complex that you own, where you have those rights, you don't have that. And so you have to look at more creative ways on those partnerships, digital assets. We do some things, some kind of fun interactives at some of the events and whatnot to promote some of our brand partners, but it's a more challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's funny, especially when you start to look at like leagues versus tournaments versus camps. Like, there's so many different genres of youth sports, and they all do deliver different experiences for brands, especially brands who I want to be on site and I want to get in front of 10,000 people. Well, that's probably more of the large scale tournaments out there than it is like a league experience. Or I want to have this journey with these families throughout the course of a season. Well, that's probably more the league side than anything. And so, I want to be integrated directly with the athletes and the families. Well, that might be more of a camp or a showcase type of a program. So it is definitely interesting, all of the different types of youth sports events. And they are not cut out for like different categories or different brands depending on what they deliver. So that's definitely I think that's a challenge a lot of people maybe who aren't in the space probably don't appreciate.
Wouldn't be aware of, right? And you talked about that there's certain brands that want to find a way to reach very specific audiences, whether it's the top players in that sport or age groups. And those smaller events may provide a better opportunity for it. They may only be 150, 200, 300 kids, but it's more surgical in approach to target that demographic as opposed to large scale events, which just provide massive reach. Right? There's some tournaments, 10, 15,000. There's some massive tournaments out there that provide you with a broad reach if that's what you're looking for.
Sure. And then, sports tech, as you brought up, like I think sports tech is to me, it's the best kind of segment or sector to be in. Cause whether I'm selling into sports tech companies or consulting for sports tech, I just see there just seems to be so much opportunity. To me, it's really the sports technology groups have allowed for more brands to come in and have access to the masses, right? How do I aggregate and sell to or reach, 1 million people, compared to like when like 15 years ago, it was like literally you had to go paper coupon, hand to hand, had to build that, right. I had to build that network of, boots on the ground. Now they're clearly through technology partners. There's a great digital opportunity for hopefully bigger brands to come into youth sports.
It's technology, as you had said, it's evolved and really exploded in youth sports. I think initially it was focused on what you see from registration and communication, those tools which are critical and they help youth sports organizations immensely. But streaming has become an important piece. You had a podcast recently to discuss that and the growth of that across all sports, and the access that provides people. I mean, I have a son who's off playing college baseball now. I'm looking forward to being able to watch his games. Right, and 10 years ago that might not have existed. So it's a great piece. And then the third component of tech is about statistics and analyzation, or analysis of player performance and stuff. So there's a couple key categories that continue to evolve, explode, and really have to find where that sweet spot is. What's kind of too much, or what's very helpful and allows people to grow and evolve with the game.
Sure. I mean, it feels like every couple weeks I'll blink and find a new sports app, or sports tech, right, brand out there that is just like killing it. They tend to be very sports specific, which I think is interesting. But the ones that you can find that are across all sports, I think are clearly the best at some point, whether it's a brand consulting or sponsorship opportunities.
Absolutely. Yeah, and helps differentiate themselves. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about what does a sports organization look for in a brand?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the simple answer for people is they look for that partnership, whether it's money or resource, something in return. But I think it's really important to step back from that. Yeah, obviously that's why we need that. But you want to make sure that you're investing, you're partnering with a brand that's invested in you, that can deliver, on what the promise is and stays connected throughout the year. Otherwise, it just, you've signed that agreement up front and there was some interaction, but it falls short. And so, it doesn't serve anyone right well. It doesn't serve the brand well, who's paid for that partnership. We're not getting more value, and then the parents and players, they're not seeing that as well. So it's really important that yeah, I want a brand that aligns with our audience and who we are, but I want them to be engaged throughout that process and find new ways to communicate and engage with our customer base.
Yeah. And I would always look at it and say, and this is more of my advice to some of our clients is a sponsor is more than just a checkbook, right? I think the great brands that really do a nice job, are the ones that, I mean, cash is important for sports organizers. So it definitely is. It helps to improve the athlete experience, improve the parent experience, and let the organization do more, more within the or with the league. But I also believe that brands can bring things like, hey, how do we promote your youth league and help you get more registrations? Or how do we elevate this league and make sure that, maybe there's ways that I can push, this organization on my social channels, or from a PR perspective, or hey, I got a big database of all of these families across the area. Hey, Cal Ripken baseball is open, for registration, or, youth basketball league is open for registration. So to your point, like the, especially as youth organizations can start to think about what is it that I want to build to build my experience and to build my nonprofit. What are those things? Because I guarantee you, brands can do them. You just got to be able to, you got to be able to ask them.
It's a great point, Garrett, and I talked about it earlier. We had cash components of of our sponsorships. But as I said, anyone could do that. And we really started to explore where else can we be the point of differentiation? Can we help them grow your registrants by providing a better experience so that it's more fun for the kids to be there throughout the year? Can we help educate the coaches so that they're more prepared and to work with their kids and make that an experience for them? And so it's really critical to look at that in a much wider lens.
Sure. And the other question that I kind of ponder is, as a brand looks at, ultimately the sports organization is a way to get in front of parents and athletes, right? And at the end of the day, you know, most brands understand that it's the parent that has the checkbook, but it's really the athlete that they want to engage with. And that is such a right. It's such a balancing act. Is like, how do I communicate, and not even communicate? How do I engage with the athletes, and then also engage with the parents?
Yeah, you want to be aspirational for those athletes to see it, want to get it, whatnot. And it's interesting. While at Dick's, a lot of our focus was still on the moms who are making those purchases for family sporting goods and things. They were really that audience, but that changes over time. And as I'm seeing this now. I'm working with the hockey organization. Once kids get to 12 or 13, the dynamic really changes in terms of what they're purchasing, what they want, who's making that decision. Kids get a little bit more control. I know mom or dad may still be, the one pulling out their credit card for it, but kids are a little bit more in control, and expressing their desire about what their needs are around that. And we see that as we have vendors who come out to certain events. Depending on their product, they want to be very surgical about which age group they're trying to show up and get in front of.
Sure. And yeah, that is fascinating because especially at a Dick's, right? Dick's gets mom and the child into the store, and it's to your point, and I know only because my 11-year-old does this to me all the time. Is that my son will he'll pick out the gloves that he wants, or he'll pick out the gear that he wants, and I have no say in that except for, do I approve the price tag or not? But it is that kind of that 10, age 10 or so, they flip the script on you, and my only job is to get in the store and kind of control the macro budget, and the kids, they're really the ones that are driving which brands am I buying.
The brands and products, it's really, I mean, it really is ingrained in them. I think about that. I see youth baseball games, and you see a 6-year-old out there with a sliding mitt on. He's running, 3 or 4 miles an hour, but needs a sliding mitt to protect himself. So that, what they see and perceive, and how that translates into their purchasing habits and stuff is really interesting.
It's funny you say that, 'cause, so I was just on I was just on a call with a brand. It's called Valet Sports, or Valet Baseball. It's Dave Valet. But he's created a training glove for kids, right? And it used to be like for baseball players, so it's a training glove, and it started off being for, like, really just the elite players, but now, I feel like it's starting to, you kind of see that, you see that a little bit of, the trend and the wave being, it's there's probably 3 or 4 years from now, it's a training glove is going to be, it's going to be part of the equipment list, right? It's your bat, your batting glove, your cleats, your training glove, your fielding glove. And it's like, he's created a new equipment genre, and I was like, man, that is fantastic.
Training age has exploded in the last 10 to 15 years and really only gets more sophisticated. We talked earlier about technology and the role that it plays in the development and assessment of players. And it really only feeds into, what training aids are, and will continue to grow into.
It's been great having you on the show. I love your insight on community marketing. Clearly, you've helped to build one of the great sports brands in America, in Dick's Sporting Goods. You certainly are now off doing your independent consulting for a number of youth sports organizations. If folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, thanks for asking, and thanks for having me today. The best way is probably just through LinkedIn. I'm actively engaged in LinkedIn to connect. They're happy to connect with people and make introductions on LinkedIn. That's the best place.
Great. Well, hey, have a great weekend, and we look forward to the next time we have a chance to talk.
Thanks, Garrett. Appreciate your time. Great to spend some time. And look forward to doing so again soon. Thanks.
Great.